Hi, and thanks for tuning in. In another video on my channel, I show you a step-by-step process of how I make an icon, but I kind of skipped over the graphics design part of that. So this video, I'm going to go into more detail in the actual graphics design part of making a custom icon. So as you see, I already have a 3D pylon drawn. That is the one part in this video that I won't show you how to do. I won't show you how to 3D model in this video. Tons of great stuff on YouTube regarding that though. And if you have any questions, of course, you can always ask me in the comments below. So it's just a pylon, of course, but what I've done is I've sliced the cone part in a couple places. The reason I've done that is if I put slices through it, when I make my flat shot, which you're going to see shortly, it'll give me some line work to work with right there. So when you're modeling in 3D, you can go into parallel or perspective. Perspective is more like true 3D. Parallel is more like an isometric drawing or like a fake 3D drawing. I want this to look as realistic as possible, so I'm gonna put it into perspective before I do my flat shot. So I'm just typing the flat shot command at the command prompt. I don't want to see my obscured lines, and I don't need tangential edges. So I just hit enter 3 times. I only need it scaled at 1. I'll go into my top view now. Rotate that. Just changing layer 0 to white. I'll switch this back to parallel view. When you're in parallel view, it's way easier to zoom in and out. Okay, so as you can see, we now have 2D line work from our 3D model. Now I'm just cleaning up that line work so it looks more like what I want to import into paint.net. Paint.net is the paint program we'll use for this tutorial. Now I'm going to use the pedit command. Select the multiple option so I can select all these. Now I'm just adjusting the width. The width is an option of the pedit command. So I just tried different numbers until the line thickness looks about what I want it to be. Go a bit thinner. I think that looks good. However, I think I want these lines to be a bit thinner. Oops. Pedit is one of the few commands where you actually have to select the objects after you type the command. If you use the multiple option, that is. Okay, the next step, I'm gonna take a screen clip with Windows snipping tool. I don't have to save this, I'm just going to copy it to my clipboard. So now I'm in paint.net. I'm going to make a new file. And it's going to be 128 by 128 pixels. I'll shrink this down to 32 by 32 pixels once we're done. I just pasted that screen clip that was on my clipboard, of course. So I'll just resize this and position it roughly in the center of my image. So paint.net, it has a lot of useful features. It's not Photoshop, but for simple things like icons, it works perfectly. It's really easy to use, really easy to learn. So the first thing I'll do is I'll invert the colors. Now I can use this wand tool. I can do contiguous, which would give me that effect, or global. When I click, it selects everything on my layer. So if I just delete it, I now have all my line work ready to draw my icon. So now I could trace over this. I might do that anyways because this line work is actually a little bit thin, but I'm going to start shading it. I'll just name this line work just so I know what it is. The layering system in paint.net is very easy to use. So when you draw icons, they're quite forgiving. They don't have to look perfect because when you shrink it down, it actually hides a lot of the flaws. Since you only have so few pixels, you have to use all your space very wisely. So things with too much detail, they tend not to look too good. I personally tend to make things a little too complicated, whereas if I simplified my icons, they'd probably look even better and take me less time to draw. Less is definitely more with icons. To get near the edges, I can also use this line tool instead of trying to line my paintbrush up perfectly. Okay, so I have my base color down. Well, actually, I'm going to add white first. So when I add the white, I'm going to put it... I'm going to make it slightly darker just so I can shade it lighter. I can show some lighting on it. If I make it completely white, then I won't be able to show the lighting. Okay, so now basically for every layer, or sorry, for my shading and my lighting, I just make new layers. Depending how much shading I put into this, I might have multiple layers for both shading and lighting. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to make one layer for shading and one layer for lighting. So I just merged those two layers together. I don't want to blur the edge of the pylon base, but I do want to blur the shading on the cone itself. I also want to put shading in here, I think. So each layer you can change the opacity. So I could use a darker orange and a darker a gray to shade the white part. This is quicker. It doesn't look quite as good, but remember again, we're shrinking this down so it doesn't have to look stunning or perfect. Okay, so the icon looks pretty good. I'm gonna shrink it just to test and see what it's gonna look like. And that doesn't look bad, but what I want to do is I want to actually darken the outline of it. Okay, so I'll try shrinking it again and see what it looks like. I shrink it to 32 by 32 pixels. That's the size of a large AutoCAD icon. I think this one will look better once it's actually imported into AutoCAD with the darker edges. So the only step left is to save it as a PNG file and then import it into AutoCAD. My other tutorial detail shows that in more depth. So this video is more about the graphic design portion of making an icon. So hopefully this was helpful or at least of interest. If you liked it, check out the other videos on my channel. Also check back in the future because I'm going to be adding new content at least bi-weekly. Thanks a lot for watching.